Yes, I'm now joined by our international affairs commentator, Doug Herbert. So, Doug, hi. Just how rare is it for the Senate, the U.S. Senate, to challenge the U.S.-Saudi relationship?
Yeah, it's a stinging rebuke. You could use the words unprecedented challenge, and it reflects the extreme level of frustration and just how much a lot of these senators are absolutely fed up, with what they see as the Trump administration's unjustified and egregious and shameful support of the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. What's interesting here is that the act that they are trying to invoke the Senate with this vote is the War Powers Act. It was passed in 1973. If it were successful this time, this would be the first time ever in its entire history that the act were actually used to end a U.S. foreign military operation. And what we're really seeing here, and the reason I say it's striking, that it's unprecedented, is because it's a rare instance where you're actually drawing a lot of Republicans over to the Democrat side, right? We had 14 Republicans voting on this measure, which is only a measure to start considering, to start debating this measure. It's not the final vote. That would come perhaps next week. But the fact that you have all these Republicans, and some of them staunch allies, stalwart supporters of Donald Trump normally, coming over, it shows the level of frustration. And what are they really frustrated with? Well, there are two things. Immediately, it is about the fact that Donald Trump has continued to find ways to justify or to support his Saudi ally, the Crown Prince, despite the CIA's finding that he was almost certainly the Crown Prince involved in ordering or implicated in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. So there's the Khashoggi thing, which has just elicited outrage all around. But beyond that, it's also riveted the world's attention back to what's a far larger disaster, you can argue, than just one man's death, however tragic that is. That is the absolute world's worst humanitarian tragedy underway right now in Yemen, still underway, where you've had tens of thousands of people dying, mostly children, of hunger, 14 million or more by UN estimates, brought to the brink of starvation. And what is this? And a lot of it is, according to the United Nations, not according to me standing here saying it, according to the UN, indiscriminate attacks by the Saudi-led coalition. And yes, they do single out the Saudi-led coalition against hospitals, in a recent case, wedding parties, indiscriminate attacks on civilian casualties. Now, the Saudis will say that they're trying to make it more pinpoint. The U.S. intelligence helps them to better target so that there aren't civilian casualties. Senators aren't buying it. Senators aren't buying Trump's defense of the Crown Prince. They're fed up. And this is, even if it doesn't ultimately pass and is successful, it shows that level of frustration. It's symbolically a real slap in the face to Donald Trump and his administration.
And that Senate vote, like you said, was just a first step. There are many hurdles before we might get to the situation where U.S. support stops.
As you always say, look, and with Washington, it's always that, right? People are always saying, well, what happens now? It's always a ping pong, right? It goes back to the House as an amendment. It goes back to the Senate. Immediately, there are two obstacles. First of all, there's going to be a Senate vote, which is, as of now, scheduled for sometime next week. And you can expect a lot of backroom wheeling and dealing and talking behind the scenes, and a lot of amendments perhaps being raised. Perhaps the senators are hoping against hope, you might say, for the Trump administration and Donald Trump himself to change his tone about the Crown Prince, to show that this has actually had an impact, that he will change and adapt his policy in response to this frustration. But let's not hold our breath for that. So what's going to happen is it doesn't have a chance, or little chance, of getting through the House, which is still very much Republican-controlled. It'll be hard to get the votes there. You could wait till January, when the House will have a Democratic majority. Then you have a very good chance of a vote getting through and something happening. So no. Right now, there are a lot of hurdles that remain, and we don't know what the time frame is going to be ultimately.
And the latest on peace talks for Yemen?
The latest, well, we heard some of it in that report. Right now, they are tentatively, and you always have to say that, underline the word tentatively when you are talking about talks is this difficult to arrange, between the Houthis, the Iranian-backed Houthis, and between the Saudis, the Saudi-led coalition, for early December. And those talks are supposed to be held somewhere in Sweden. And as of now, the parties, as of now, are tentatively, I use that word again, committed to the talks. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that the administration is invoking to say, to try to say this would be the absolute worst timing for the Senate to pass such a resolution, just as we're trying to get the peace talks started. But the senators once again say that's putting the cart before the horse. The far bigger issue is the U.S.-Saudi alliance through thick and thin, and even in the face of what's been one of the most shocking murders of a U.S. citizen and a writer and a journalist, really in modern memory in this relationship. So they're drawing the line under that.
U.S. resident.
U.S. resident, excuse me, not citizen, and drawing the line under that and basically saying the buck stops here. And they're trying, and this is a rare thing, to show some Senate oversight, some congressional oversight on this administration and to try to hold them to account.
All right. Thank you very much, Doug.